morning. You're listening to Insurance Matchmaking, your path to health, life, and Medicare coverage with Matt Libby Insurance. And now, sharing his knowledge, here's your host, Matt Libby.
Well, good morning. Welcome back to Insurance Matchmaking. I'd say spring is here. It's not official. I mean, no, it's not until later in the month. The red buds are the red buds are budding. It's so funny. I was driving in this morning, and the petals are coming off the pear trees. It looks like it's snowing. Which, if you're listening to this on original air time, it might be snowing. There's supposed to be a chance of snow this weekend. The old saying, march in like a lamb, out like a lion. So we always expect to have some cold, bad weather on the cold side. I mean, we're going to have bad weather. It's spring in Tennessee. We're going to have the thunderstorms. We're going to have the tornado watches and warnings. Right now, it's just it might get cold. I did see something about, I don't know if it was later today or one day this week, that we do have a threat of some severe weather, but I'm ready for the cold to be over. We've been kind of planning some camping trips, just some to coincide with things we need to do, and that gives us a good excuse to use the camper instead of going somewhere and getting a motel, so we can go and enjoy our camper and spend a day or two in a campground and then go do those other things. But one of the things I wanted to pull up this morning, I got a notice for an article. It's the headline is 10 drugs expected to lead U.S. sales in 2026. Now, some of these are probably going to be common names you're used to hearing. You've heard me talk about them here on this show several times. But so a couple of these, I'm not even really familiar with the names. It kind of surprised me that they're in the top 10 list of, and it's saying leading the sales. It's not necessarily being that it's going to be dollar amount. At least that's not the way I'm understanding it. It's going to be that these are the drugs that are going to be most sold. Maybe I am reading it wrong. It could be dollar amount. But, it says the company projects Merck's cancer drug Keytruda will earn $12.7 billion U.S. revenue, nearly twice that of second top-selling medications. Okay, so I guess it is by net revenue. So Keytruda, which is a cancer drug for lung cancer, and the second one is Biktarvy. It's going to be $8.2 billion. Yeah, now I'm looking at they're all the dollar amounts, and it's an HIV treatment. And I think I've seen it advertised on TV a lot. I always tell people when I'm talking to them about their Part D, when we used to talk about the donut hole, which we don't have anymore, so we have to I have to change my term. But I used to say, if you've heard of the donut hole, if you see your prescription advertised on TV, expect to hit the donut hole. We now have, thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act, we do have a maximum out-of-pocket on the Part D drugs. And again, I always have to kind of make sure I qualify that. It's the Part D drugs that are on your plan's formulary. So if you're prescribed a medication and it's not on your plan's formulary, you can't get a formulary exception, then if you get that drug, you're just going to have to pay for it, and it's not going to go towards that $2,100 max out of pocket. So you want to be sure that you show up at the pharmacy and they say, well, it's $2,500 to pick up that prescription or more. You know that it's not covered by your drug plan, and you say, oh, I'm going to hold off on getting that. Can you talk to my doctor and see if there's something else that my insurance might cover? And then if they don't, it's a matter of you get with your doctor and have them in the doctor's office. They know how to do it. They don't like to do it, but they do know how to do it, and that is to file for a formulary exemption. You're going to need, unfortunately, a lot of those things. It's it's so funny. The medical community is still dealing in faxes, and actually one of the reasons for that is it's actually more secure than regular email. Faxing things seems to be the more secure way to send some of that HIPAA compliance stuff. They have forms; they just have to type in a statement, and it. I say a form. It's basically like a form letter, and they just fill in the drug name, they address it to whether it's United Healthcare, Humana, Blue Cross, Cigna. It doesn't matter the company. They'll have address it to that. The to block. The from block is going to stay the same because it's the same doctor, and then their reason why they're requesting that the drug plan consider that drug. So that's something, if you know it's going to be over $2,100, you know your drug plan's not covering it. As I mentioned, number 2 was Biktarvy, which, like I said, I've seen it advertised on TV. Number 3, you've heard me talk about this one. If you listen to the show any amount of time, you've heard me mention this drug several times, and that's Eliquis. Eliquis is the most popular blood thinner right now. Replaced some stuff that had a lot of other bad side effects, and you have to be careful with blood thinners because obviously very easy to continue bleeding if you injure yourself. So if you're on blood thinner, but these are going to be prescribed because you've maybe had a heart attack, you've maybe had a stroke, you've maybe been dealing with what they call deep vein thrombosis, where you have those blood clots that could get to your lungs and kill you. So the Eliquis has been a very popular drug, and it's not cheap. It's not the most expensive drug out there, which kind of surprised me. The fact that it's number 3 shows you how widely it's prescribed. And I hate to use the word only here, but I know it's a month's supply. I think it's 1 month is only about $600. And the reason I say only is because a lot of these other drugs are more than $1,000 just for one dose. So it's very easy to see where they would, have a high revenue or high sales numbers. Eliquis is not as expensive as some of these other drugs, but it's very widely prescribed. So that's one of those. Dupixent is number 5. Is very common for COPD. I run into a lot of that with a lot of clients that are on Medicare, and unfortunately, and it just drives me nuts, the ones that say, I got to have this inhaler covered and this inhaler covered. Hold on a second. They light up a cigarette, and I'm kind of like, I know it's maybe too late, but maybe if you quit smoking, you might not need those very expensive prescriptions quite as much. So just a thought. I don't know. We used to say, worse non-smoker is a former smoker, because we're more critical. I mean, it's hard to give up, but it can be done. And I'm so glad, that I quit, and I realize it's been, like 30 years ago now. So that's good. But those most of the people have COPD. We used to just call it emphysema. Now that's chronic obstructive pulmonary disorder. And I just saw a commercial last night for Breztri, which is one of those treatments. I don't think it's on this list, but there's some expensive drugs for. So anyway, so that was Dupixent. Wait a minute. I got ahead of myself. Biktarvy, then I said Eliquis. Now here's one that I'm not familiar with this name. It's Imbruvica. I guess that's how you say it. And again, it's for blood cancers. So a lot of these cancer, sometimes some of these cancer drugs, sometimes they are like a pill form of chemo, and then some of them are after treatment or after surgery prescriptions. So these drugs can be very expensive. You're going to hit that $2,100 max on those, and so that's something to do. All righty. And then, so that was the Dupixent is number 5. Approved for 9 chronic inflammatory conditions, including COPD. So that's the one thing I say. So we had Biktarvy and Dupixent, and I've seen them both advertised on TV for COPD. Opdivo, I think I've heard of that one. Again, another one of those cancer drugs. Includes melanoma and renal cell, which that would be kidney cancer. Number 7 is Ozempic. That is one of our type 2 diabetes drugs, also for cardiovascular and kidney disease. So it has a lot of different uses. So it kind of helps with blood pressure and heart issues. Still very expensive. Trikafta, and that's for cystic fibrosis. That's why I haven't dealt with a lot of clients with cystic fibrosis. But it's very expensive. And so that's one of those could come up. I hope I'm saying this right. Ocrevus, that's number 9, and it's for multiple sclerosis. So again, those number 8 and number 9 are things I don't run into a lot with my clients. They're not common disorders. I say common. COPD, cancer, diabetes, heart disease. I run into a lot of clients with those. Some of these other that are very debilitating, but they're not they're really not as common, but anybody that's dealing with them knows that it's very expensive to treat and deal with. This is one I wasn't familiar with, but I did hear about this one recently. It's called Ibrance, and again, it's prescribed for those with breast cancer. So, and I think this is one of those that once you've been diagnosed, you've been treated, you have to take this drug for like 5 years. And so it's very expensive. You're going to hit that max out of pocket on your prescription drugs with this one. And then again, that goes why, we very highly recommend, some type of cancer drug. Sometimes we call, or cancer plans. Sometimes we call them CHAS, cancer, heart attack, and stroke plans. And so those come in handy, and everybody's like, well, I've got this Medicare supplement now. Won't that take care, won't that cover my cancer? Yes, it will. And so will a Medicare Advantage. So will your marketplace plan. So will your group. They'll all cover your basic medical costs. But again, those drug costs, you're still going to have some out-of-pocket costs, and they can be very high. The max out-of-pocket on Part D for Medicare folks right now is $2,100. It was $2,000 last year. I don't know what it's supposed to be in 2027, but it'll go up. So that max goes up, and that's where these plans can come in very handy. If you ever need the plan, and that's the thing, we talk about $1 a day. Most people can get anywhere from $10,000 to $18,000 of cancer coverage for $1 a day, depending on your age. I mean, if you're 84, it might not be a lot of coverage for $1 a day, because the cost does go up. Because basically, if you've had cancer and it's only been you had it, you're not as apt maybe to have it later in life. But if you haven't had cancer and you're in your 80s, the chances of it, coming up are higher for you because you've never had cancer. So some of the plans will say, well, you're more apt to claim this because you hadn't claimed before. And then, of course, if you have had cancer, a lot of plans, we maybe after 5 years, some plans after 10 years, we can get you covered. Generally, I'm not going to look at when it's 10 years. I've got enough plans that after 5 years, they look at you as being cancer-free. Now, we do have one plan that there is a 12-month. This is kind of strange. Elijah and I were really having to kind of dig into it yesterday because hadn't really noticed before. He was thinking you could, 12 months after cancer diagnosis or being cleared of cancer, you get it. That wasn't it. There is a 12-month pre-existing condition, and you have to be 5 years cancer-free to get the plan. But if the previous cancer comes back within that first 12 months of you getting the plan, then they don't pay out. So they figure if it's returning. But if it's another cancer, and I hate to say, but it's like, say you had a melanoma skin cancer and then later developed breast cancer, colon cancer, something like that, it's not going to be a 12-month waiting period because it is a different cancer. So we're up on the break here, and I'll be right back after the commercials.
Hi, this is Marvin Long, your local business solutions consultant. At Twin Lakes, we believe strong communities start with strong connections. For 75 years, we've been proud to serve this region, and today that commitment continues with our 100% fiber network. With gig speed fiber and local 24/7 support, we're here to keep your business running smoothly. Let's talk about how Twin Lakes can power your success. Learn more by calling 931-476-2151 or visit twinlakes.net.
Dreams are built one home at a time, and you can help make them real. Join Upper Cumberland Habitat for Humanity for the Putnam County Dream Builders Luncheon, March 24th at Live Church in Cookeville. Social hour starts at 11:30, lunch at noon. Tickets are just $25, or become a table host for $400 and make an even bigger impact. Join the Dream Builders Luncheon and support affordable housing in our community. Reserve your seat now at uchabitat.org.
And now, back to Insurance Matchmaking with Matt Libby Insurance.
All right, welcome back. Please support our advertisers there. That helps keep this station on the air and helps me keep this show going. So I was talking about the cancer plans, and I know I've kind of beat that dead horse, as they say. But it really is a big deal, and I have had clients that have had to file claims on their cancer plans. And the thing is, if you ever do need to file a claim, you're never ever going to come close to paying as much premium as you're getting back. So that's one of the big things there is to look at, yes, if you never get cancer, you could have saved that money. But if you didn't have the plan and you get cancer, you're going to rue the day that you didn't get the coverage and cover that. So that's one of the big things. And one of the things we're going to institute, we've talked about it before, and I think we're going to, we need to do it, is having a declination form. We're going to present our recommendations to what plans we think you should get, or what recommendation, and then just have you initial off on what plans you accepted, what plans you turned down, and we do have to protect ourselves because sometimes things can come up and you have claims, and if you say I never told you about it, or I told you didn't, come back and say I told you didn't need that, and then it's something that you need down the road. It protects both of us. So we're going to be doing something like that. But one of the things I wanted to bring up, because like I said, I've been talking about the cancer and heart attack, what sometimes we call CHAS. And we've got a new plan. We're going to be reaching out to our clients already on that, that we already have on the books that are already working with us, but maybe we didn't talk about, because it's going to be new to us. It's not a new carrier, but it's new to us. So it's kind of like, when you get a 2-year-old car, hey, it's your new car. It's new to you. So this is kind of what this is going to be with this plan. And one neat thing with this company, we talk about cancer, heart attack, and stroke. This one, their heart plan, it's not a heart attack plan. It's a heart and stroke plan. And the reason I emphasize that is your typical heart attack plan is not going to pay anything for a bypass surgery, a stent, so if you have heart surgery, you're in the hospital for a heart condition, but you didn't have a heart attack, you're going to be able to file claims on this plan. So it's going to cover some things that most heart attack and stroke plans don't cover. So we're kind of excited about having that, be able to offer that plan. And I think I talked about this was last week or week before, that I always kind of hesitated to recommend a heart plan to my Medicare supplement clients. I've always recommended the cancer, whether you're getting an Advantage plan or a Medicare supplement. I've always encourage, a critical illness plan that covers heart attack and cancer for my under 65 clients, because most generally they're going to be in that situation of you have a heart attack, you're going to be out of work for a while. Whereas when you're retired, there's not a lot of expensive ongoing treatments after a heart attack. I mean, you may have to do some physical therapy after getting out of the hospital from a heart attack, but those are going to be, once a week, or 3 times a week for a month or so. And you'll have some, co-pays of that, but you don't have to travel to do it. It's something you're going to do, locally. So I didn't really think about the fact of there being a lot of out-of-pocket exposure for a heart condition, or for, heart attack recovery, for heart attack recovery. But as I mentioned, I talked about a list. I should have the list in front of me again. I think it was number 3 for Eliquis. That on that list, let me pull that list up real quick. I think it was number 3. And most generally, like I said, pretty much anybody who's had a heart attack or stroke is going to get prescribed Eliquis because they want to keep your blood moving and not have your heart have to work too hard at it. So, and that's an expensive drug, and depending on what other drugs you have, you may hit that max out of pocket, or you're going to come close to it if you don't. So that's an expense. That's going to be a big expense on you, is that prescription. So that's where it really helps on the heart part, is at least have something that might help you cover that currently $2,100 a year max out of pocket for just your Part D coverage. So I'm looking at offering the heart attack plan or heart plan to my Medicare supplement in Medicare Advantage clients, where I was focusing more on the just cancer coverage, because cancer is one of those things that you're more than likely going to hit the max out of pocket for the health coverage, especially on a Medicare Advantage plan. The expenses for cancer, for treatment, yes, your Medicare is going to cover as long as it's Medicare approved. But there are experimental things, or there may be places you want to go. It may be a cancer clinic that has great results, and they don't take Medicare. I mean, not everybody in the U.S. that provides health care takes Medicare, or I know, a lot of people will go out of country for treatment. There's, some very good clinics in Mexico that don't charge a lot. And then you also have what do they call it? Medical tourism. And I was just watching recently, we've been following this couple that's been traveling. It's called Van Life, and they have a small, a Sprinter, I say minivan, but it's not a minivan, but it's a small van, mini motorhome. And they traveled all around the country, South America, Europe, and they just recently got back from Africa. But on their way back from Africa, they had to ship their van. That both of them had some health conditions, and so on their way back from Africa, they didn't fly directly from Africa back to the States. They flew to Turkey, and it's actually a program. They coordinate with the Mayo Clinic, but they have English-speaking doctors, and then you have a concierge that comes because not all the doctors are going to speak English, but that concierge will be a translator for you, so you can get treatments, and they're less expensive than getting those treatments here in the U.S. So some people actually will fly to Istanbul and go to these hospitals, and they have kind of like Ubers, but they're cars for the hospital. They'll pick you up at your hotel or your Airbnb and take you to the hospital and get your treatment. And it's very very clean, very modern hospital. So don't think, oh, I'm in a third world country. And no, it's not. It's very modern and very well. So those are some expenses that you may elect to do for, say, cancer that your Medicare is not going to cover because you go out of the country for the treatment. Medicare covers you in the U.S. Yes, Medicare will cover an extent. Things like near the border for for emergency care, not for those things that could be considered elective treatment. Again, elective treatment's not going to be covered. If it's just something you don't have to have, Medicare can say, well, that's elective. That's personal choice. That's your personal expense. And some of those things that you decide you want to have done, Medicare may not deem as necessary. And the downside is if you have a Medicare supplement, and Medicare deems it not necessary, your supplement's not going to pay either. And generally, that's going to hold true for most Medicare Advantage plans too. If it's something Medicare's not going to approve, they're generally not going to approve it either. So that's where some supplemental coverage, very inexpensively. So that's one of the things we're going to be talking about. I mentioned last week there's also a cancer plan that Elijah's kind of getting excited about. That you get a DNA test. In that DNA test, they use that and they recommend to your oncologist saying, this is the person's genetic makeup and this is the makeup of the cancer that we had, and we know people have used this treatment. And so they help that oncologist recommend, take the best course of action to beat the cancer. And it's not very expensive. It's a little more expensive than some of our other cancer plans, but not a lot more expensive. And it does still have some of the, hey, you got diagnosed with cancer. Here's a check to kind of help take things, but you also have that other process in there, the genome testing to figure out what's your best course of action. So Elijah will be probably reaching out to a lot of my clients on this. If you're one of my clients and listening, we're going to reach out, even if you're not a client. If you've worked with us before and just, maybe didn't buy, didn't sign up for anything we recommended or just what the right time for, we're still going to, if we have your contact info, we're going to reach out. We just want to make sure people are covered. Yes, this is how we earn our living. We have to earn a living to be able to provide this assistance, but it really is. We do look at it as a ministry also. We want to make sure that you don't lose your retirement. As I say, lose your retirement. We don't want you to outlive your money. We hope you have a long and healthy life, but we don't want you to outlive your money. And by letting us put some protections in place to protect your income. One of the things that's come up this week, and I don't know if I mentioned it on a recent show, we talk about outliving your money, is the other thing is people say, oh, I won't need that. I've got enough in my savings, or I've got my 401k and I can draw out of that. Well, one of the downsides of drawing more out of your 401k than you normally do, depending on where your income is, you do have that threshold of where you go into where you're subject to IRMA. I've talked about IRMA a lot is that income-related monthly adjustment. Now, if you're on Medicare, when you file your taxes, and currently this year it's $109 for an individual, $109,000, which is line 11 of your modified adjusted gross income, which is line 11 on your 1040. If you're over $109,000, or if you're married filing jointly and you're over $218,000 income, you'll have a surcharge on your Part B premium, and it can go as high as actually you're paying double monthly for that. So, it's just kind of awkward if you just barely go over it. And what happens is you've got that premium for a year until you file your taxes again, and Social Security goes, oh, you're under the threshold again. You just pay the standard premium. So taking more money out of your 401k to cover some medical expenses could raise your taxable income, versus if you have a insurance plan to cover those things, that's not income. You just cash out that plan and you pay for your health care from there and save and keep your retirement funds where they are so you can enjoy them in your retirement, especially if it's something that, hey, maybe you hadn't been feeling real well, hadn't been real healthy, and get that, and then you get something diagnosed, or if you have that heart attack or stroke, mini stroke, and get those treated and end up being healthier than you were before you had the event, and you're going, now I want to do that traveling we talked about doing now that we have the time because we're retired, and you hadn't blown your nest egg on your health treatment. Now you have money to do the trips that you want to do. So there's a lot of things where those plans can come in very handy for covering that. So, and if you don't have a lot of retirement funds, again, it's a small, I hate to use the word investment. I'm not an investment counselor, but it's a small price to pay to have that peace of mind that you're not going to be bankrupted by having a health condition, because that is the leading cause of bankruptcy in America, is health costs. And so we want to make sure that maybe that you have the insurance to cover that. I can't remember the exact stat, but I remember when I started with Aflac, it was like 56% of bankruptcies were medical costs. 75% of those people had health insurance. It wasn't the not having the health insurance, it was not having coverage to cover the other expenses, replacing lost income for a job, or protecting the savings, just those extra costs that hit you, they're more than you can handle. You're paying that bill, you're paying back that medical bill, you're having trouble paying the other bills, even if you get back to work. So that's where the insurance can come in here very handy. One of the other stats, and I just saw somebody post on this the other day because people talk about, the single-payer socialized medicine. Japan has socialized medicine for years, and there are more Aflac customers in Japan than there are in the United States. So just using Aflac as an example there. It looks like I'm out of time. Remember, keep listening to us here on Grace 107.7. And remember, at Matt Libby Insurance, we can cover you from head to toe, and it doesn't have to cost you an arm and a leg. And we'll speak again next week on Insurance Matchmaking.
You've been listening to Insurance Matchmaking with Matt Libby, your path to health, life, and Medicare coverage with Matt Libby Insurance.